Zoos often get a bad rap, for many reasons, but today I'm going to talk to you about the role of zoos, what they actually do, but aren't always very good at telling you. I'm not going to be discussing how zoos look after their animals in captivity, their role in educating people about the natural world. There are plenty of academic papers you can find online discussing those points. You might point out that a lot of those papers are biased because they're written by zoological institutes, and to you I say, of course they bloody well are written by zoos. You're never going to have a truly independent study because the only people who care enough to spend the money doing the research are zoos or anti-zoo groups. Both, you could argue, have a bias, one more obvious than the other. It's up to you to be scientifically literate enough to read both and decide if they did an accurate enough study and then make up your own mind. But I digress. Today I'm going to be talking to you about zoos' roles in saving species. Many people have heard zoos work to conserve endangered species and that the animals they keep are part of captive breeding programs. But as a zoo visitor, all you see are animals in enclosures. I'm going to try and highlight some amazing examples of work zoos do, other than keeping animals in enclosures for your viewing pleasure. I won't be able to cover every project, the zoos involved, species being protected, but I hope this will either help you rethink zoos or encourage you to look into the detailed conservation work your local zoo may support. Okay, let's begin. I lied a little. I said I wasn't going to talk about their role in education, and that's exactly what I'm going to do now. However, when you think of education at zoos, you think about signposts in front of enclosures, the presentations zookeepers give, or the closer encounter demonstrations. Here, I'm talking about in situ education and research programs. Let's take, for example, Selamat Kanyaki. It was established by what is now the Wild Planet Trust, the parent charity of Paynton Zoo, Newquay Zoo and the Late Living Coasts, and the Pacifico Institute in Indonesia. They work in Indonesia, obviously, Sulawesi specifically, to protect the Sulawesi crested macaque, whose population has declined by as much as 80% in the last 40 years and is now one of the top 30 most endangered primates in the world. Selamat Kanyaki's goal is to allow self-sustaining populations of these monkeys to survive by protecting their habitat through education and social change in Sulawesi. Similarly to this, you have the Macaca Nigra project, working with the same species though more focus on behavioural and environmental research, as well as working closely with the national park the macaques call home. Macaca Nigra project receiving support from Zoo Leipzig and Zoo Vivarium. This isn't even the tip of the iceberg. I'm not even touching the iceberg on all the research and education projects. These are just two that I've personally seen in action on the same island, but there are projects like these everywhere. I'm pretty sure I can't upload a video long enough on YouTube to mention all of them. Do note that with these projects I've just mentioned and other projects that are yet to come, some were founded through zoos, some receive funding through zoos, some share knowledge and staff, but all are benefited by zoos. Next, stopping the illegal wildlife trade and working with anti-poaching. Save Vietnam's wildlife, both the name of this project and a great instruction. Previously, the Carnivore and Pangolin Conservation Project, which was established in 2000 as a joint venture involving the founder of the Shoalden National Trust, later director of Newquay Zoo, with its main focus on conservation and rescue efforts of the Austin's palm civet and pangolins. In 2014, it became Save Vietnam's Wildlife through a collaborative partnership with Cuc Phuong National Park. They received support through Newquay Zoo, Wild Planet Trust, Houston Zoo, Taronga Zoo, just to name a few. Not to mention the creation of the Austin's Palm Civet Conservation Breeding Loan Program, which has seen Austin palm civets bred in zoos and returned to Vietnam for release. Endangered Primate Rescue Centre, EPRC, also in Cuc Phuong National Park. They're working to rescue, rehabilitate, breed and conserve Vietnam's critically endangered primates. This includes the Cát Bà Langur, one of the most endangered primates in the world. Only found on Cát Bà Island, in the 1960s there were an estimated 2,700 individuals. Not a large number, but in 2018 there were only as many as 50 left, a worryingly small number at the best of times as a disease or bad weather could risk the species. But with Cát Bà Langurs, if there are too many young males, it could lead to group takeover attempts, which can lead to infanticide and other infant deaths, causing a lot of damage to the population. Which happened in 2018. Luckily, EPRC was established in part thanks to Frankfurt Zoo and is now jointly operated by Zoo Leipzig and Cookfong National Park. Then you have anti-poaching. Like the fantastic Black Mamba's anti-poaching unit, an amazing all-women anti-poaching team based in the 62,000 hectare Baluli Nature Reserve, part of Greater Kruger in South Africa. Founded in 2013 by Transfrontier Africa NPC, they now receive support from the likes of Aalborg Zoo, Kansas City Zoo, and Australia Zoo. Sure, I've been talking about all these projects, all this financial help, but what species of zoos actually saved from extinction? Well, here's the fun bit where I get to show you some incredible animals. I'll start off with two of probably the most famous examples. The Arabian Oryx. By 1972, they were extinct in the wild. However, luckily, 10 years earlier, in 1962, Phoenix Zoo started a breeding herd of just 9 individuals. They started sending new oryx to other zoos, and by 1980, there were enough Arabian Oryx in captivity that reintroduction to the wild began. In 2011, there were more than 1,000 back in the wild. The Przewalski's horse. In the 1970s, they were declared extinct in the wild. In 1977, the Foundation for the Protection and Preservation of the Przewalski's horse was founded. Captive populations in zoos started to be exchanged throughout the world to increase genetic diversity. In 1992, 16 individuals were released back into Mongolia, and a steady stream of reintroductions have occurred since then. Since 2011, Prague Zoo has released 35 individuals in 8 rounds, and as of 2014, there were an estimated 387 native-born horses in Mongolia between the 3 reintroduction sites. Now for some more obscure animals. Père David's deer. In 1900, 30 individuals remained in their home country of China within the walls of a royal hunting garden. That year, during the Boxer Rebellion, troops from the then German Empire were occupying the garden and shot and ate them all, as you do. Luckily, 18 were still alive in European zoos. English nobleman Herbrand Russell managed to acquire these animals and created a breeding herd in his deer park at Woburn Abbey, which became Woburn Safari Park in 1970. Herbrand's son saved the herds from the ravages of both world wars, and Herbrand's great-grandson began the reintroduction in 1985. As of 2015, there were an estimated 600 individuals in the wild, split between 53 herds. Bali starling. In 2015, there were only an estimated 100 left in the wild in Bali. However, there are a suspected 1,000 surviving in captivity, and reintroduction of captive individuals began in 2018. Golden lion tamarin. In 1969, there were only as few as 150 left in their native habitat of the Atlantic forest in Brazil. By 1984, the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. began a reintroduction program involving 140 zoos from around the world. By 2018, there were an estimated 3,200 individuals back in the wild, although their numbers are decreasing again, unfortunately. California condor. By 1987, only 27 individuals were left. Thanks to the efforts of San Diego Zoo and Los Angeles Zoo, these individuals were taken into captivity to start a breeding program. In 1991, reintroductions began, and in 2012, there were 231 back in the wild. Mauritius Kestrel. In 1974, there were 4. Just 4. Anywhere. Jersey Zoo, now Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust, began a recovery plan instantly. However, the first successful fertile eggs were only laid in 1979. Due to some fantastic efforts realised through a captive breeding setting, Welsh biologist Carl Jones was able to bring the population back up to 50 by 1984, establishing 2 self-sustaining populations by the early 1990s, and in 2012 there were approximately 400 individuals in the wild. Black-footed ferret. In 1979, they were declared extinct. Just extinct. Until a Wyoming cattle rancher's dog brought home a dead one in 1981. In 1989, 18 were captured to start a captive breeding program. Reintroduction began in 1991, with Toronto Zoo being one of the most successful at breeding and reintroducing them. In 2013, it was thought the population was now back up to 1,200 individuals. Pink pigeon. In 1991, there were only 10 left in the wild, due to collaborative efforts between the previously mentioned Jersey Zoo and the Mauritian Wildlife Foundation. There were an estimated 400 flying about by 2018. Echo parakeet. Somewhere between 8 and 12 individuals were left in 1987 after a couple of failed recovery attempts in the early 1980s. They were assumed to become extinct in the near future, like the rest of the parrots among the Mascarene Islands. To many people's surprise, a successful breeding season occurred in 1994, thanks to some improved protections. Following this, the Mauritius Wildlife Foundation enlisted the help of Jersey Zoo again to start a captive breeding program, and as of 2015, there are 650 free-living birds. I'm going to stop here, but I could go on. The Partula snail, whooping crane, Guam rail, Rodriguez fruit bat, but no, I'll stop, but I do hope you get my point. In 2019, EAZA, the European Association of Zoos and Aquaria, reported that their 103 members provided €22.6 million in conservation funding, protecting more than 600 species. That's just European member zoos. Globally, it's much more. Any other year, I feel this would be an important video. However, this year, I think it is doubly so. Zoos can only exist, protect ecosystems, help communities, saving species, because people visit them. COVID-19 may have put a pause on many industries, but animals and zoos can't take a break. All have been operating while visitors haven't been able to visit, and some are already having to close their doors for good due to lack of visitors. If you can, please visit your local zoo, or support them remotely by donating. Unfortunately, this can't be only a one-time thing. Zoos make their money needed to operate for the entire year during the summer months, which have been drastically cut short due to COVID. So, if you can please continue visiting during the winter, the best outcome will be that your continued support during this hard time will allow zoos to survive until the world is back to some kind of stability and they can start fully supporting their conservation efforts again. At worst, your favourite and local zoos will die, and there will be an immeasurable effect on the conservation of wildlife globally. In a world without zoos, those animals I've just mentioned likely would no longer exist, as well as countless more, and there are many more stories like that right around the corner. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos. Ring the bell if you want to keep getting notifications so you know when I upload a video. Bye.